And welcome in, everyone. I forgot to unmute. Yeah, a bit delayed stream for the podcast. Life happened yesterday, so yeah, nothing to do about that. So yeah, new week, new luck. And yeah, since we had 3 weeks since the last recording, we have a lot to talk about. So, and that's why I decided against doing the podcast late yesterday evening and yeah, not getting all the topics in or having to rush through everything. And I think it's more valuable for everyone when we do it the proper way. I am also fit right now, so we can have a nice little session today. Okay, but it will not be that little. I think I have 10 topics on the agenda. Welcome in, Cobb. How are you doing today? Yeah. So, let me actually check here. Do that. Coffee always helps. Okay, yeah, so let me switch briefly to the agenda for today. Oh man, I have so many tabs open in my browser. Yeah. So here are the show notes for today. Of course, it says March 13th because it was intended to be yesterday's episode, but yeah, did not work out time-wise. So I post the link in the chat. So if you want to follow up on one of these stories, and we have some videos linked as well today, you can find them linked in the show notes. So we have some controversies to talk about which arose during the last few weeks. That's on the one hand the whole story with NewEgg in the US. I just found it interesting to hear the different outlets talk about the situation, because at least here in Germany we have, I don't know how many e-tailers who are selling PC hardware, and when you listen to YouTubers and content creators from the US, you get the perspective. There is only 3 or 4 or so, and nothing else. And I find that interesting. So, yeah. Then we have the story of Artisan Builds, a boutique PC builder, also in the US, who actually screwed over a fellow Twitch streamer, and yeah, that backfired quite heavily, and yeah, now the company basically doesn't exist anymore. So yeah, but we are going to get into that. And one additional stuff, I'm not sure if I'm going to mention it on the podcast because it's not really a story that is technology related or in our space, but it's electric cars, and basically Rivian, who is also a electric vehicle company, they also did a screw up, but they basically remedied that because they initially wanted to price hike pre-orders, and but that situation already has been remedied, and it's all good, but there also was a large outcry in the YouTube space, as far as I got it. That's that whole controversy complex. Then I wanted to discuss Bungie announcing that they prohibit the usage of Destiny 2 on the Steam Deck. Then there was a news that there will be a universal standard for chiplets. So the small dies that, for example, AMD uses on their Zen CPUs. The next thing is there were 2 massive hacking attacks on NVIDIA and Samsung by the same hacking group. And the damage is actually pretty comprehensive. Then another news story on AMD where they have completed the acquisition of Xilinx. And we are going to discuss what implications that could have for consumer or professional AMD products in the upcoming years. Then, of course, last week on Tuesday, Apple had its first major event where they launched the Mac Studio with an M1 Ultra processor. We are going to talk about that. Then there was a news about a Linux security vulnerability, Derty Pipe, that is already patched, but I think it's important to talk about it, especially now that the Steam Deck is out and Linux is going to become more mainstream. And when stuff gets more mainstream, you have a new situation when it comes to security stuff. That's just the case. Of course, and sticking to the topic of the Steam Deck, Valve released the Windows drivers. Next topic is it will be Microsoft Game Studios or Xbox Game Studios has officially announced support for the Steam Deck. Then I want to point your attention to a fundraising action from the gaming community for supporting people in the Ukraine. And we are going to close the whole thing off today with the story that the EU is actually discussing very concretely banning non-replaceable batteries in smartphones in particular, but if they ban it on smartphones, it's basically banned in all electronics. So so that's a right for repair topic for today. So So as you can see, that's a lot of stuff, and also the links section is also not that small for today. It basically fills that page here, that screen. So a lot of articles that we're going to go through, and So let's wait a bit in case people are joining in. I actually looked forward to recording this episode and was a bit bummed that it wasn't possible yesterday, but yeah. Doing things properly for this is better than rushing everything. No? Why is Twitch saying my stream is unstable? Interesting. Let's quickly check that. Interesting. That is interesting. Why is it complaining? Let's see if we can reduce that while we are on. Okay, yeah, nevertheless, I would say we get going with the recording. Yeah, that looks better. Okay, I hope that you can still see and hear me properly. I hope that everything keeps working correctly. So, but we should be better off now. Okay, perfect. Okay. Let's quit the music. Switch scenes. Okay, the status for YouTube is a bit strange right now. YouTube. Sorry for that, everyone. Okay, but the stream is up. Okay, perfect. Nice. So, yeah, let's get started with the episode recording, I would say, so we can get into the nitty-gritty of the topics today. And we start again with the countdown.
3, 2, 1, 0.
and welcome to my technology podcast. This is episode 14, if I remember correctly. This episode is going to air a bit delayed. Life happened, and I was not able to do the live recording in time, so this will be launching on the 14th instead of the 13th. Yeah, and I was correct. It is episode 14. So, yeah, since we had a delay of 3 weeks, not a delay, but an interval of 3 weeks between the recordings of last episode and this episode. Even if the audio version got released at the regular spot on the 27th of February, we have a lot of topics to go through this time. And therefore, I would get right into the topics for today. As always, if you want to check the articles that I am referencing, you can head over to my blog at bnonet.com, and here you find the show notes for this episode. So this is currently showing the if you're watching the video version, the live stream show notes, of course, and when you're looking for the show notes for older episodes, you can just go to the site over here under episodes, and you find all the podcast episode show notes with all the relevant information. So, but let's dive directly into the first topic. And I actually linked a playlist from the YouTube outlet Gamers Nexus here, because there has been a bit of a controversy in basically US tech media in the last couple of weeks, where basically Gamers Nexus, as in the role of a regular customer, got screwed over by NewEgg, which is a e-tailer. I'm not even sure if they're a retailer, but I think they're an e-tailer in the US. This is basically distributing computer electronics, multimedia stuff, and so on and so forth. And for a project, the Gamers Nexus ordered a motherboard that was marked as refurbished, and since their originally intended board that they wanted to use for the project worked, so that board in question here was basically a backup. They never opened the box, so not even the product box, but the shipping box. So they never inspected the delivery, and when they did not need it anymore, they basically just sent the product back. And in the end, NewEgg basically said, hey, we don't accept that return because the motherboard has socket damage. And that started a whole investigation by Gamers Nexus, which is something they love doing. And as you can see here, this incident has caused 4 videos, and definitely, if you're into inner workings of the tech industry, it's definitely worth a watch. And I have worked in IT services, so as an IT service provider myself for quite a few years, and I can definitely tell you that basically not accepting returns of motherboards due to socket damage is not that uncommon. And yeah, users are not really that forthcoming when it comes to that. So they send the board back as unused and want a refund or so. And when you check the board, it turns out, yeah, it has been damaged. And that's not happening that is happening quite often. And so this is a real issue. And what came out of this situation here was that basically the board got damaged initially. NewEgg sent it back to the motherboard's manufacturer, and the board that Gamers Nexus received basically even had the manufacturer diagnostic sticker on it. So there was the case number, all the information, and yeah, that's something that should not happen, because that means that a product that was basically declared faulty was resold as open box working. So that's not something that should happen. And basically there was a lot of viewer interactions with Gamers Nexus and other outlets, and there was a huge outcry because a lot of people reported, hey, I had similar issues. And the reason why I wanted to discuss this is perhaps someone who's living in the US can clear me up on that. But when I'm listening to those videos and comments, I'm getting the impression there are 4 or 5 e-tailers or retailers in the US where you can get computer parts. And when I look at price comparison sites in Germany, which I know are a very particular German thing, not many countries have something like that. It's surprising. We have, I don't know, tens or hundreds of e-tailers and retailers who are selling computer parts. So if one company screws up, that's not a huge disruption to the market, not leading to people not knowing where to buy stuff. But for the US, it seems like NewEgg having trust issues is raising really red flags for a lot of people, because they don't know where to get their hardware from anymore. So that's pretty interesting to witness. And yeah, if that is really the case, yeah, there is probably a lot of room in the market for new businesses to get going here as an e-tailer. So it's of course hard because margins on computers and computer hardware and electronics in general are not that high. But it should be possible if you only have 4 competitors or 5 competitors. Yeah, so that's really interesting. But yeah, but I can definitely recommend watching the series. And apparently NewEgg in the last talks was seeing the errors and promised to fix stuff. and now it's on seeing how they're going to proceed with that. And so I don't know if I will follow up on that story, but I thought it was worth mentioning. Another story and another company screw up that happened during the last few weeks. I referenced an article on this here from PC Gamer. Was that a PC building company, Artisan Builds. So they are a boutique PC builder focusing on custom gaming PCs. They were heavily working on with marketing on Twitch, so you could become an ambassador for them, and you only needed to put a link in your description and perhaps give them a shout out on stream, and then you would be eligible as an ambassador. And basically, what they were doing was they had regular live streams where they would be basically building a PC that would then be given away to one of their affiliates. And in this story, at one of these streams 2 weeks ago, I think, a streamer with about 2,000 followers on Twitch was drawn. And then the CEO on stream basically changed the rules and said, her total social media followership is not about more than 5,000 in total. And so really changing the rules and bashing on the size of her channel, and then basically redrawing, and that caused a huge backlash in the whole gaming and tech community on social media, basically. And I think YouTuber Jace2Sense built her then a new PC and sent it to her. Companies were gifting her stuff, and basically the whole situation was not handled properly by the company Artisan Builds, and there was an update on the whole situation over the weekend that basically the company now is insolvent and is shut down. So all the employees were basically let loose mid last week, and it turned out that the company Artisan Builds even did not have a license to operate as a business anymore in the state of California, where they were originally headquartered. And if you're playing games like that with your legal status of your company, basically screwing up like that for all public to see, and therefore drawing real attention to yourself, is a pretty bad idea. And the sad thing on that is now that the employees of Artisan Builds are paying the price. So that's really just something in regards to how not to run a business, especially when you're heavily relying on your social media presence. And yeah, so the whole situation basically led to the company's full collapse, and they're now trying to perhaps get the company back on its feet. But yeah, it's unclear if that is going to happen. Kia basically was one of the big benefactors of the whole situation, because I think she went from about 2,000 followers on Twitch to now around above 20K. I don't know the current numbers. I did not check that up. But during the whole situation, she was doing basically shout outs to other streamers. So basically using the whole situation to give back to the community. And it's great to see a community getting together when a company like that screws someone over. And that's just showing that overall people in the our space, basically technology, gaming, and so on, they are very relatable to each other and supportive of each other. Yeah, so that's that story. Then we are sticking to gaming, and we are going to discuss that Bungie basically prohibits the usage of not only prohibits, but basically blocks the usage of Destiny 2 on the Steam Deck. So they're writing here, Destiny 2 is not supported for play on the Steam Deck or on any system utilizing Steam Play's Proton unless Windows is installed and running. Players who attempt to launch Destiny 2 on the Steam Deck through SteamOS or Proton will be unable to enter the game and will be returned to their game library after a short time. Okay, they changed that. Ha! Interesting. So, originally this said that you would be permanently banned when you would do that. Now they changed this to... now they changed this to this sentence. So they're not talking about banning anymore. I'll read that again. Players who attempt to launch Destiny 2 on the Steam Deck through SteamOS or Proton will be unable to enter the game and will be returned to their game library after a short time. Yeah. So originally they were saying that basically everyone who would attempt to just launch the game and get access to it would just get banned. And that I found to be too harsh. So this is the official Steam support section on Bungie's help website. And so I did not even know that they changed that. I didn't read any news about that. But kudos to Bungie to also backpedal here and basically giving people the chance, if they open the game by accident, that they are not getting banned. Basically for just trying a game that they own and that they have on Steam. Yeah, so now they added this phrase here: players who are not accessing Destiny 2 through Windows and attempt to bypass the SteamOS Proton incompatibility will be met with a game ban. And that's fine, because they are officially saying, yeah, we don't support it, but you get basically returned. If you try to bypass it, then you are banned. So that's more like it. And yeah, so that's a good move. Good, and this situation has been cleared up. So that's a good thing. Then, yeah, we're already done with that story. Then staying in the, not really staying, yeah, going back to the discussions with current CPU technologies, it has been announced that AMD, ARM, and Intel are now backing a universal standard for chiplets. So for everyone not knowing what a chiplet is, it's basically the idea of adding multiple chips, so-called dies, onto one substrate. So this green PCB layer that you see here, and basically connecting them with each other. Prominent example for that is AMD right now. They are using this in their Ryzen CPUs already since 2016, or no, 2017. And yeah, so the big three in CPU tech basically now decided to say, hey, let's make this make a standard for that. And according to the reports, AMD's current Infinity Fabric is already compatible to that. And besides being that the current initial spec for this universal chiplet standard is coming from Intel. So you can see that that everyone is working on something like that, and interoperability is perhaps not a bad idea. And we're getting a bit more into that discussion later in this episode. For those who are not watching the episode, this is an article on Engadget that I'm showing on screen right now. Yeah, so interesting to see that there is a lot of cooperation in this space, despite everyone heavily competing with each other, competing with each other. And staying in the technology space, we have news about NVIDIA and also Samsung getting hacked, both by the same hacker group. These are articles from Engadget and from The Verge. So, and basically, the hack at NVIDIA was very successful. They stole gigabytes of data. I don't know if they have this in this article. Even a terabyte in NVIDIA's case, with full source code for DLSS and NVIDIA drivers, and we don't know what everything else they got. Apparently also information about upcoming GPU launches that are planned for the end of the year. So yeah, and basically the hacking group was holding NVIDIA for ransom, since they were saying, hey, if you do not open source your Windows and Linux drivers, we are going to release the full 1 terabyte. And I don't think that NVIDIA is going to comply to that. And a week later, basically the same fate happened to Samsung, where the same hacking group, which goes by the name, I have to check my notes on that, which goes by the name Lapsus. And I was actually intrigued by the name by this hacking group, because Lapsus originally is Latin for sliding or falling. And if you go with the German translation, it's accident, mistake, or clumsiness. And apparently this group is from Latin America. And I found it a bit strange that they are calling themselves that, and why that is. But so basically a few hundred gigabytes were also stolen from Samsung. I think it was 200 gigabytes. And also with a lot of sensitive information. They were also asking for a ransom. But I did not follow up on what happened, but probably NVIDIA and Samsung both did not comply with the demands, since those companies typically have pretty good backups, especially with key information like this. And as was discussed by other outlets, competitors from NVIDIA and Samsung, they cannot really exploit these informations for products, because they would make themselves attackable and suable, and therefore it doesn't make sense for them to use these leaks, and it's just basically for reporters, journalists who want to look into this. Interesting to see what information are basically obtainable from this. But even that is a bit morally, not that nice. Of course, you could discuss if it's fine with companies like NVIDIA and Samsung, who are probably billion or trillion dollar companies, but nevertheless, it has been obtained via illegal means, and those companies are held for ransom and on these information, and that's not a nice thing to do. But this shows that even large companies like NVIDIA or Samsung are not immune to attacks like this. And it's pretty interesting that both attacks basically happened in a very short time frame after each other. And going back to AMD, who closed a deal to acquiring FPGA developer and producer Xilinx. For everyone who is not familiar with the term FPGA, FPGA stands for functional programmable grid array. So you have a chip that you can basically code the behavior into it on demand. So despite a so-called ASIC, which is basically a specialized chip that is made for a specific purpose. You basically, every one of you has an ASIC in your phone. Basically, all smartphones, smartphone chips today have ASIC components. For example, for AI, for image processing, and so on and so forth. Those functions are basically enhanced with ASICs who are optimized to perform particular tasks. And what an FPGA allows you to do is to basically not have a hard-coded or physically encoded circuit for a particular task, but you can basically tell the FPGA what its purpose is in a particular moment when you feed before you start feeding it data to process. And as a coprocessor for CPUs and GPUs, that is very, very interesting, especially when you see basically systems making use of special circuits like today with the phone ASICs, and even on CPUs like Apple's or not CPUs, let's call it SoCs, so system on chips, like Apple's M series processors, where they're combining not only compute units for general compute, but also units for AI. That's for in Apple's case is called Neural Engine. In NVIDIA's case, it's called tensor cores, and they also have circuits for image processing, and even now with the Pro and Pro Max and Ultra models, also for video encoding and decoding. So there is a lot of specialized circuits in modern chips, and basically combining the general compute of a CPU or a GPU with something that can do more specialized tasks, so with a higher efficiency and taking load of the general purpose compute unit, that is a huge thing, especially when you think about case that came right into my mind in AMD's case would be AMD does not have ray tracing circuits right now. So AMD is using their regular compute units on the GPUs in order for calculating the ray tracing, which works, but not as efficient as NVIDIA's RT cores. And if you now think about it, not doing specialized RT cores on their GPUs, but perhaps with the upcoming GPU generations and CPU generations adding FPGAs, depending on what you do and what you configure, a accompanying FPGA could get instruction set for ray tracing, or even like something like DLSS. FSR is AMD's competitor for that, which is currently not AI based. So depending on how you do it, you have much more options and could use an FPGA to load off that particular workload from the general compute unit. And the big thing in my mind for that is when you bought, for example, a RTX 2000s card from NVIDIA, you are locked to the RT cores and Tensor cores that are on your particular card. That means if there are improvements to the algorithms of that are used, for example, in the updated cores that are now on the 3000 series from NVIDIA, you're not participating in those improvements. You cannot, physically not. What an FPGA instead allows you is you get an update delivered to your system, perhaps as part of a driver update that tells the FPGA, hey, here is now my new ray tracing algorithm 25.0 or something. And suddenly, without changing the hardware, you have all the improvements of the new algorithm. And that could be huge. And if you want to learn more about how FPGAs work and what the possibilities are, I linked in the show notes a video by YouTuber Cortex, and he's discussing all of that. And the weird thing is, in his discussions and comparing the solutions that you can implement, for some reason he is focusing on Intel's solutions that are using specialized circuits, and he's not even talking about what Apple is doing. And for me, Apple is currently the prime example what utilizing the specialized circuits on their chips, because Apple is a prime example because of the tight software and hardware integration. And also he's only talking about pairing the FPGA with the CPU, but I don't see a reason why you couldn't pair a FPGA with a CPU and with a GPU, so that you can leverage an FPGA on the GPU no matter if you have a CPU with an FPGA installed or not. And those chiplet designs, these chiplet interconnects, are an important part here, because in theory, AMD/Xilinx can also supply these FPGA modules to other companies for integrating them into their CPUs and GPUs. So it will be interesting to see what AMD comes up with. And according to the reports, they are planning on releasing first products with Xilinx FPGAs integrated already in 2023. So it could be that we are seeing probably first enterprise products at the end of the year or early next year. And then it's not long until we see it in the consumer space. Or even AMD says, okay, we do it in the consumer space first, because they are then getting an advantage in regards to functionality with compared to NVIDIA. And of course, Intel is also now getting into the GPU space. So it will be interesting to see what they will be doing there. And sticking to the topic of CPUs, I already mentioned Apple and their M1 Ultra and so on earlier. So last Tuesday, Apple had their first big media event of the year, where they introduced a new iPhone 13 color, the new iPhone SE, and the new iPad Air with M1 chip. And the star of the show was this thing here that you see on screen now, with the article from Mac Rumors. And that's the so-called M1 Ultra SoC, which will be shipping this week, I think on the 18th, in the new Mac Studio computer. And if you look at these numbers here, you can see there are a few interesting numbers here, especially on the top right, the silicon interposer with 2.5 terabytes a second interprocessor bandwidth. And what's meant by that? The M1 Ultra, don't they show it here? Sorry, quickly switching. You can see it here, basically. Or let me actually quickly grab an image of that to show that. Let me see if they put that up here. One second. Or let me check if Apple has it on the website. Yep. Mac Studio. Yeah. Too bad. They're not showing that graph here. There we go. Here we have the press release. Let's go to this one because you can see it visually better here. So for those listening to that, you will have to listen to this. I'm describing basically what I'm showing on screen. So this is the press release from Apple on the M1 Ultra. And what you can see here is basically what we were talking about earlier. This is a substrate carrying the M1 Ultra chip that teal and orange and reddish thing in the middle that is surrounded by memory dies in this case. And the interesting thing is the M1 Ultra is 2 M1 Max chips that were released last year in October on the 2021 MacBook Pros, basically fused together with this silicon interposer, which is nothing else than a chiplet interconnect. Basically what we were talking earlier about, but with a bandwidth that no other company at the moment can match. I read a comment by someone on YouTube who said that bandwidth should currently impossible with our level of technology. I found that statement a bit profound. I don't have a real overview about interconnect standards, but everyone that I heard discussing it, even I don't get the name right now, right? But definitely everyone is just saying this amount of bandwidth is insane. And basically you don't have any losses in performance basically for those two CPUs working, or SoCs working together as one. So you're effectively doubling the available performance more or less one by one. And the performance figures that were leaked now are pretty impressive. So these are Apple's official graphs. I'm back to Mac rumors now. So they are saying that the Mac Studio with M1 Ultra basically outperforms by 80% the Mac Pro with an Radeon Pro W6900X. So that's a Radeon 6900X GPU that trades blows with the RTX 3090 and the 3080 Ti. And though that GPU alone costs at the moment $2,000 to $3,000 US dollars, only the GPU. Yeah. That's crazy if those numbers are confirmed by independent reviews. Yeah, that would be actually crazy. And especially when you think about that, you more or less get that performance for and perhaps not exactly that performance level, but because there is also a non-binned version of the M1 Ultra, which same with the M1 Max, which has a few less GPU cores, but nevertheless, not everyone buying a Mac Studio needs that maximum GPU power. And when you look at CPU performance, there have been benchmarks leaked where, according to those, the M1 Ultra on Geekbench outperforms the 28-core Mac Pro. I'm not sure if this here is really accurate, because I saw another report, because in this it says the Mac Pro only reaches 19,951, and I saw a report that the Mac Pro reaches somewhere around 26 or 28,000, which then, of course, the M1 Ultra with a 24,000 multi-core score would be slower. I did not have the time to dig through the Geekbench database myself. But yeah, take this with a grain of salt until the official benchmarks are out, probably at the end of the week or next week. And we will see, but still, if you buy a fully spec'd out not M1, Mac Studio, you're paying about 8,000 US dollars. So probably in Germany, that would be something between 9 and 10,000 euros. That's cheaper than basically the base version of the Mac Pro, with when you just equip it with the 28-core Xeon and some basic amenities, and basically paying less and getting the same performance if you need it for your line of work. Because remember, these are work machines. These are not intended for gaming. Of course, you can use them for gaming, as I've also tried it out on my M1 Max MacBook Pro, which I'm streaming this from. Yeah, that you have to. Those improvements basically are recuperated through you being able to do your work faster. So these are normally business expenses, and yeah. But still, the leaps that we are currently seeing in CPU technology or in SoC technology, they are insane. They are really insane. And Apple is already hard at work with the second generation of their in-house core architecture, the M2, which is expected to release at the end of this year. So we are going to see the entry-level stuff with M2 cores at the end of this year. We are expecting to see the DDR5 equipped AMD desktop platform at the end of the year. Intel's second generation DDR5 platform. So, yeah, there is a lot in that space to look forward to, and it will be interesting, especially now that everyone is taking the approach of using specialized circuits, or in AMD's case, FPGAs, to load off work from the general purpose cores to specialized hardware. And that is just interesting to see, and I am intrigued how fast this is evolving. And if we're now talking FPGAs, so the story about AMD and Xilinx from earlier, imagine not having to rely on chip refreshes, but basically downloading a firmware update for your FPGA and getting the latest algorithm improvements for those particular jobs. That is just nuts. Yeah, so from the CPU side of things, we go to the Linux side of things. There was a report about a new security vulnerability called Derty Pipe, which again allowed malicious access to system components on Linux. This already has been patched, luckily, so there have been already kernel updates out. But I found that interesting that this story basically popped up in the middle of basically the Steam Deck releasing. And I found it worthy to talk about the whole situation in general, because we saw something similar when the Mac became popular again in the early 2010s with the updated with the Intel Intel CPUs and so on, where Macs definitely became again much more mainstream than they were before, and therefore you had macOS becoming more mainstream. And once you have something become more mainstream, you are presenting a lucrative target to malicious people. And we are now in the situation that the same will happen with Linux, so in particular desktop Linux. The Steam Deck is running Arch, and there will be more effort taken to exploit users' devices, especially users' devices who are perhaps not familiar with Linux and who are making mistakes because they like to tinker around with their devices, which is totally fine. And it will probably not as bad as when with your phone, where you have a lot of sensitive data on. Not necessarily you will have sensitive data on your Steam Deck, because people who like to tinker around with it won't probably use this as their primary computer where they have all their documents and so on. That might happen, might be a case, but I think for most people the Steam Deck will be a gaming console, basically. But it's important to realize and see that the risk factor for people running desktop Linux getting attacked is definitely rising through that popularity, and that's nothing to be alarmed about. You have to just be aware about it, because that's a natural thing that happens when something gains popularity. And by the way, the article about this vulnerability that I'm showing here is from Ars Technica. And talking about the Steam Deck, Valve last week released the Windows drivers. And according to media reports from last week, the drivers at the moment are terrible. Performance and integration with the Steam Deck seems to be not on par with what they did with SteamOS. But that's of course to be expected, because Valve is focusing on SteamOS. And it's nice that they are putting in the effort to support Windows at all. So they are giving you that freedom to say, no, I don't want to run SteamOS. I want to run Windows, or perhaps any other Linux distribution that you want. So you have the freedom, you have the option. It's your device, and you can do everything you want with it. And is awesome that Valve does this. And yeah, we have to see. Probably drivers support for Windows will mature, performance will mature on Windows, and yeah, it's definitely a positive thing to see. And there were complaints that the Windows drivers were not available from the get-go, but yeah, there were enough issues for Valve to fix on the SteamOS side of things, so that's understandable, I think. And yeah, one big limitation at the moment is you cannot dual boot the Steam Deck at the moment. So if you want to run Windows, you have to run Windows only until you use the recovery image to basically get SteamOS back. There will be probably some improvements once AMD is rolling out the full SteamOS installer. So the means for you to install SteamOS also on other computers. Then they will be bringing dual boot support to Windows for Windows as well, and then you can install SteamOS and Windows in parallel. And remaining with the SteamOS, I have an article here from The Verge, but we can actually, when you go to the first paragraph of this, there is a link. Microsoft has marked games as verified, and that leads actually to an official post by the Xbox Game Studios on the Steam community site, where they are officially declaring games as verified and playable that are coming from the Xbox Game Studios. And you have games here like Psychonauts 2, Hellblade, Senua's Sacrifice, Battletoads, Max the Curse of Brotherhood. And as playable, they marked Sea of Thieves, Forza Horizon 5 and 4, Quantum Break, State of Decay, YOSE, and officially unsupported at the moment are Gears 5, Halo Master Chief Collection, Halo Infinite, and Microsoft Flight Simulator. The interesting thing in this statement is basically this paragraph here. I read it for you. It's up to our studios how they fit Steam Deck integration for their games into their busy schedule. And with a lot of great stuff already in the works, some titles may take longer. We've put together this list so you can see how our titles are coming along. So there is an active effort made at Xbox Game Studios to actually support the Steam Deck, which actually surprises me. Because with Game Pass, Microsoft is, of course, trying to tie people to Windows. And yeah, it's, of course, a nice move from Microsoft, because in theory, if you like the games on Game Pass and you want to play them on deck, you have to buy them. So that's basically probably the only thing behind the whole situation, that Microsoft is basically using this as another cash cow opportunity. And I have to say myself, I am considering, even I'm already subscribed to Microsoft Game Pass for PC on Windows. I am considering buying Forza Horizon 5 for Steam so I can play it on Steam Deck. So I'm actually considering this, and yeah, so I'm a bit torn about if I would basically continue to use Game Pass and just buy the games I want from there in the future, just to run them directly on Steam, and so I can use them on what platform I would want. Perhaps I don't know if I'm going to run Windows for a long time on my PC myself. I don't know that yet. I will have to see, and there are various factors that are playing into that. And of course, Game Pass is nice, but I had a situation with Game Pass last week at our weekly gaming evening where I wanted to use a functionality of Game Pass that integrates with Electronic Arts services, where you basically get EA Play bundled in Game Pass. And I was not able to use that to all my best efforts. And if I cannot use the promised stuff in those services, it's worthless to me. So that's all to consider. Yeah. And then we're through with the Steam Deck topics. And we're getting to a, let's call it crowdfunding action, or that has been taken on itch.io, where they are basically sending a bundle hosted by Microsoft and 733 other studios, where you get a huge indie game bundle, and the proceeds of that are going to support for Ukraine. At the recording of this episode, the invasion of Russia, Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Sorry, I misspoke. So Russia invaded Ukraine. Has been going now for, I think, 1.5 weeks now, and there is a lot of suffering there, and I found it amazing that people got together and started something like this, and you have now, they already now have collected over $5 million to support the people in Ukraine, and the crowdfunding is still going 3 days from the moment of this recording. And if you want to interact with this, you can either go to the show notes on my website bnonet.com and get the link there, the direct link, or you go directly to itch.io. It's itch.io, and basically the bundle is right first thing on the website. I can actually go there here. So it's basically right here, bundle for Ukraine. And I have contributed myself, and it's not really about, for me, not even really about the games that you're getting with it, but it's for me, it's more about supporting this action from these creators to really get some help to the people who need it. And on another final note on the topic of right to repair, it was in the news last week that the EU Parliament is going to ban permanently glued-in batteries in smartphones. I'm showing the original article from the Frankfurter Allgemeine Zeitung, the FAZ, on screen right now. But if you go to the show notes you will find a link to a Google Translate English translation for that article. And yeah, basically, when they ban it for smartphones, you basically ban it for all electronics in the end as well. And especially for right to repair, this is a huge win, because most devices at the moment get thrown away because their batteries are dead. And especially, for example, with the previous generation of MacBook Pros, basically the batteries were bonded to the case of the computer. In previous models and in the new models now, the batteries were glued in, but you had how are they called, magic pull tabs, so special glue bands that you can stretch and pull out under the battery to remove the battery. And these are also commonly used in many smartphones, but not all. And basically, what the EU now does is forcing companies not to basically bond the batteries to other components. You can glue them in, but make them still removable. There are solutions for that. They are convenient, they work, and that's a good thing. That's a win for our planet, for us as consumers, because we can make our devices last longer. And yeah, I think they want to finalize this year, and even there will be a grace period, if I got that correctly, until 2025, which is normal that you have transitionary periods like that. And yeah, that's a good thing. So we're ending this again on a positive note today, because that was actually the last story that I wanted to talk about. And yeah, I hope that today's topics were interesting and a bit enlightenment for everyone. Also, what are my discussion topics? And yeah, the next episode will then be again in 2 weeks on, what is that date? That would be again March 27th. And yeah, then hopefully again at the normal recording time at 5 p.m. CET, or no, 4 p.m. CET on Sunday, the 27th of March. And yeah, the recording of this podcast will, of course, air again at 8:30 p.m. today. And yeah, therefore, thank you very much for watching and listening, and see you next time. Okay, that was the podcast recording for this time. Did that not work? Ah, okay, no, the music is just really quiet right now. Okay. Yeah, a lot of topics, a lot of has happened in the past few weeks. And a lot of tech stuff to look forward to. 2022 is looking to get really interesting. So, if someone has comments or questions on the topics we discussed today, feel free to jump in. We can do a quick Q&A session if someone wants to jump in. Seems not to be the case that there are questions or comments. Okay, perfect. Yeah, then thank you very much for watching, everyone. Thank you very much for joining in. And in regards to my overall stream schedule this week, tomorrow will be the next planned Beat Saber stream, but it might be that we will do some product exploration depending on how FedEx is behaving, because if for those following me, not following me on Twitter, I ordered Pimax's new sword controllers, and they are due to arrive till Friday at noon. But the parcel that I'm expecting for that already arrived in Belgium this morning, and I am actually expecting the package to arrive tomorrow. And if it does arrive tomorrow, we will do the unboxing and checking those controllers out tomorrow instead of Friday. And I'm really looking forward to checking these out, especially because let me quickly get them on screen. Pimax. And it's a bit sad. You have to dig a bit for the details on these controllers, because the product page from Pimax is a bit bare, actually. And there we go. Let me switch scenes. So these are the sword controllers. They're actually made to basically be handled like fencing swords. As you can see, they have the primary control on top is a touchpad, which I find pretty interesting. Basically everything else is pretty much similar. How you attach it to the hand, it's very similar to the index controllers. And here you have the specs. So one controller weighs 230 grams, color is blue, size, interface for is USB Type-C for charging. What I found interesting is that they are also using 2.4 gigahertz wireless. Or that might be that it's 2.4 gigahertz wireless that they're using for interacting with the standard Steam VR tracking hardware, and they support both Steam VR tracking, so Lighthouse tracking version 1.0 and 2.0. And what is actually very interesting going into this here is these rechargeable batteries. So they have a playtime of 3 hours. But the funny thing is, it's actually not showing on this blog page. Let me get to the product page. Accessories, sword controllers. Because these controllers actually use standard interchangeable lithium batteries. So these are It's not saying it here. But if I saw that correctly, these are standard Samsung batteries. Not Samsung, Sony batteries. Yeah, here it is. NPBX1. Interesting. Yeah, if you're living in Japan, you have to pre-order the batteries yourself. But since those are Sony batteries, you will probably get them much cheaper than anywhere else. So yeah, I am looking forward to checking these out. Especially, I have to say, even till today, I find the Knuckles controllers from Valve awkward in Beat Saber. I still find the grip style I was doing with the controllers from the Rift S better, but it works. Here you also have the diagram of the controller, so you have standard trigger, grip button, and so on and so forth. And I'm actually planning to test these controllers in multiple games. So, of course, Beat Saber, but also I want to test them in Skyrim VR, in Half-Life Alyx, and in the Hubris demo that I played, I think 2 weeks ago. Yeah. So depending if they arrive tomorrow or not, so depending, it will be either tomorrow or Friday where we will check those out live on stream. So stay tuned for that. And yeah, that's it from my side. Okay, then let's wind this down, and I can get to editing the audio version for release via Spreaker later today. So thank you very much for watching, everyone, and we actually have some viewers today, so I will try to find someone that we can raid. So, thank you very much for watching, everyone, and hopefully see you tomorrow, either for Beat Saber only, or yeah, checking out the Pimax sword controllers. Have a nice evening, everyone. Bye bye.